Take my breath away. Danger zone.
So a lot of you guys probably saw the trailer reaction that I did to the Top Gun trailer and noticed that I had tears in my eyes when I saw that trailer because it was so moving to me that they were actually doing this sequel. I watched Top Gun a ton of times as a kid. I was so in love with that movie. And we actually rewatched it not that long ago.
I watched it for the first time not that long ago, yeah.
So for you, it was like a late entry into your life, but you could see like why it was so popular.
And even though it was a late entry in terms of watching it, that movie is so iconic that I felt like I knew it even though I'd never actually watched the movie, just because so many of my friends loved the crap out of that film.
And so watching this, it was so shocking to me I'm not gonna give away any spoilers, by the way, this is gonna be non-spoiler. It was so shocking to me at the end to have this realization that, speaking of late entries, like it's a late sequel, 30 years removed.
Yeah.
It's so rare that you have something like that where it surpasses the original. Like, I felt that it surpassed the original. That was my thought coming out of this. I'm like, I remember, because we just saw it.
Yeah.
And I was like, wow, like the action and the way everything comes together and the acting and everything like that, because the original definitely has that 80s vibe to it.
Well, the interesting thing about this as well was while it's a current movie, it still very much felt like an 80s movie in a lot of regards. And I felt like it built on the original really well.
It did.
But with the benefit of all the new tech that we have right now, which makes watching it so much more thrilling because the stunts are so much cooler now because we're able to do that now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I mean, off of what you're saying, because I get that sense a little bit as well, that it felt like an 80s movie made today. But I think that what I was feeling more than it being an 80s movie made today, because like the only thing that really gave me that sense was a flashback scene in the film. That was the only moment where I was like, this feels like a movie that would have been made years ago. But outside of that, the beats of the film, it just made me feel like, whoa, this feels like just a movie. Like we don't get these anymore, where you just have an action film, hold on, you get an action film with like character development and characters just sitting on things and pondering stuff and spending time together, and it's not just blitzing through everything.
But that's what I mean by like, it feels like an 80s movie, because you said so yourself, we don't get that anymore.
Sure, that's fair. Okay, that's fair. I remember getting that in the 90s as well. I mean, films with character development and whatnot. And we do get movies today
we still get movies with character development today.
We get movies today where, characters are allowed to take their time and think on things. But I think that the combination of it being an action film that allowed you to just sit with these characters for a bit was what makes you think of the 80s and whatnot, because you used to do that more. Action films used to actually be more thoughtful before they just became these, popcorn things, brainless popcorn things. But this had heart. It had a lot. It had a lot of heart, and it had moments that were very touching, and it actually moved me in ways that I was not anticipating. The film is quite predictable in that, like, within the first 30 minutes, you know where it's going. Like, you already know where it's going, but it does such a good job of taking you along that adventure that you forget what the plan, not the plan, but you forget that you kind of know where this is headed.
Yeah.
Because you get lost in the adventure of it all. Although
saying that, there was something that they planted, an idea that they planted in the beginning of the film, and I thought, oh, for sure, I know. I'm so smart. I know what's going to happen. And then they didn't play that beat, and I was like, oh, that was actually unexpected. I wasn't expecting that. I really like the acting in the film. I thought it was fantastic. Tom Cruise brought his A game. Yes. And I felt the acting of everybody in the film, in fact, including Val Kilmer. What he did was great. And Miles Teller did a great job. When I saw him in the trailer, I wasn't sure how to feel about. I mean, I know he's a good actor. Yeah. I've watched him multiple times, but when I saw him in the trailer, I was like, am I gonna like you in this movie? Because I know what's going on here. You're meant to be Goose, basically, but in the movie, he did a fantastic job. Like, I watched him, I'm like, whoa, like, I'm just buying into everybody in this film. I wish that they had found a way to have, like, at least one of the pilots be Asian, because they show you Asians in the film, but none of them are. And I was like, what's up with that? How come, like, they're just background? The main pilots, yeah. Yeah, like, how come the Asian pilots are just background and cannon fodder for all intents and purposes? Sacrificial lambs. Like, why couldn't they be, like, actually pilots that had lines in the film that mattered? But anyway, not the point. It does trace some of the beats
a lot of the beats from the original Top Gun, but it does it in such a way that doesn't feel like, hey, remember that?
Yeah, it was interesting because there were definitely a lot of things that made me really happy because of nostalgia, right? And I thought that they played that nostalgia card really well because there, like you said, there are things that feel so familiar. The music, a lot of the shots, just the look of it and all of that. And obviously the fact that we've got Maverick again and a lot of the characters from the original film, and then they're still kind of playing a lot of the similar beats, but it still felt new and fresh. It felt like its own thing.
Yeah, you know, one of the things you said earlier was how much it built off the original, and I think that it was very, very much to its advantage because you have Maverick who has his experiences, not just his experience from the first story, but his experiences between these two films that he's aged, and he's done a lot of thinking and a lot of stuff is on his mind and whatever over the past 3 decades since the first Top Gun film, and there's a weight to all of that.
Yeah.
And that weight is very present in the dialogue, in Tom Cruise's acting. I thought that was fantastic. You know, for a film that is very, I guess, I'm hesitant to use this word, but for a film that's very simple in terms of its story, it had so much going on.
Yeah.
Between the music choices, between the editing, between the shots. Like, I thought that Joseph Kosinski did a fantastic job of updating Top Gun for the new generation. The one thing that I didn't like in the film was the thing that you enjoyed, which was the flashback.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that it was the only moment that kind of pulled me out of the movie and I think it's just because I know Top Gun, I know what these characters are thinking about, I don't need you to show me movie, and I think the film actually would have done a good job already without the flashback of helping to catch the audience up on what he's thinking about.
I think it's good in the sense that even if you've never seen the original Top Gun, you could watch this film and still derive a lot of enjoyment from it and understand exactly what the characters are thinking about and what they're feeling because, like you said, it's very clear. Mm-hmm. But I did enjoy that flashback scene. I thought it was a nice touch and it was really moving for me to see that included in there.
Yeah, I think it's just like I already knew what he was thinking about. There was a cue that triggered his flashback and I was like, I know what he's feeling right now. But anyway, the film felt compelled to do that because for people who haven't seen the original, I'm like, well, fuck those people. Outside of that flashback, I really like the film. You know, I like how these scenes took their time. That scene where the flashback comes up is actually quite a long scene if you think about it, because it's where we're getting introduced to a lot of people, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't rush through anything. It's like, no, we're just living in the scene. We're just, getting to know people. This is unlike anything else today, because in films today, you have to have like, to have that coverage of character development and whatnot, it's got to be like 8 locations. It's got to be like, you got to keep moving around so as to not bore the audience. But the movie was very confident in its footing. It was very confident in the way that it decided to tell the story. It wasn't trying to rush around, and no pun intended, because it's like, planes flying around.
There's lots of that.
Yeah.
We haven't even talked about that. We've been talking about all of the other stuff, and we haven't even talked about the coolest thing about the film yet.
Yeah, well, I think it's because the film had so much heart. It had so much going for it in that regard that I think it is worth emphasizing, because like I think the action stuff you already know is going to be dope. Like, it's Tom Cruise, he's shooting for real. For the most part.
The planes themselves are real planes for the most part. Like, it wasn't a CGI bonanza.
If there was any CGI in the film, I couldn't see it.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell.
It was incredible, and we watched it in IMAX as well. So you definitely get like the sense of the scale and how exciting it is and how harrowing it is and like just how skilled these pilots are to be able to pull off these maneuvers, and how skilled the filmmakers are to be able to pull off showing us those maneuvers in a really interesting and fun way.
Yeah, right from the get-go, right from the beginning of the film, it's beautiful to watch. And we watched this in IMAX. That is definitely the definitive way to watch the film. Because I'm looking at it and I was like, oh God, I wish the whole thing was shot in IMAX, and I really don't know why they didn't. I suppose it's fine, like, because for a lot of the film is like in 239, right? Because it's for cinema, and maybe that was part of the point, is that when they're showing you these action scenes, they're giving you the IMAX format to put you in the cockpit, to make it like a ride, but otherwise you're watching a movie. I think that on the one hand, I wish it was just a consistent format. On the other, I get it and I appreciate it because the director is there to tell his story through the lens of cinema. There's a very particular cinematic quality to 2:3:9 aspect ratio, and so that was what was employed for telling these stories. If you're used to framing things that way, like actual framing, then that's how you want to tell your story. It was digital IMAX. Digital IMAX is not like film IMAX where it's loud cameras. Digital IMAX is they're quiet, and so you could have conceivably, they do Marvel movies that way where the whole movie can be IMAX. So why not this? So if I had a second tiny caveat, it would be that. Other than that, I love the movie. I loved the movie, and so much so that I already booked my tickets to watch it again in IMAX again. Such a profoundly fun experience.
Yeah,
it was a moving experience, and you don't really get so many of these elements in one film that often. Like sometimes you get it with Marvel, but like you have something that where what you're looking at is real because it's Tom Cruise. You're getting moved emotionally. You have these characters that you are spending time with that you start to really care about. You understand the stakes really quickly.
Yeah.
There's just so much going on, and the music and the direction, it's just across the board. It's fantastic. And so I think that there might be some bias in there because I'm a Top Gun fan already, you know, and I'm obsessed with flight and aerodynamics and all that stuff. Aviation.
Yeah.
Like I love all that stuff. But and so maybe it's got a lot going for me anyway. But I think that just I try to be objective when I watch stuff, and I think objectively it's just a fucking good movie.
It's so good. Like at the end when the movie ended, turned around to look at our friends, and we were all just like, that was an amazing movie.
Yeah.
It was like a properly good sequel because it was taking the story that we knew previously, building on it, and creating a new story.
Exactly.
You know?
So, anyways, I loved it, you guys. And if you've already seen it, do let us know your feelings in the comments below. Did you love it as much as we did? Thanks for hanging out. I'm Jaby Koay. This is
ACHARA KIRK.
Peace out.